Hey guys,
Hey everybody.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be talking about health insurance options. This is a topic we've covered a couple times now, but we get a ton of questions about it, and it makes sense why we get a lot of questions about it because it's really confusing. There's a bunch of different options as travelers. There's a bunch of different options for regular individuals as well. But for travelers, it's a little more complicated than for the average person because while on assignment, we can take insurance through the travel company, but between contracts, you have to figure out options there, and if you're switching companies, it can make things really difficult. So this is probably one of the most common questions we get. So tonight we want to go through all the options, talk about what we've done. We've done a bunch of different things over the years. We've tried different things, and our thoughts on this keep evolving. So we'll talk about what we've done, and then we're also going to invite our health insurance agent on here to talk about what she offers and why we decided to go with her.
All right, guys. So Jared is going to share our video in a couple of groups so that more people can join on with us live. And while he's doing that, I'll give some brief introductions. For those that haven't watched our videos in the past, my name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Cazazzo.
And we're both traveling doctors of physical therapy. And we're the faces behind the Travel Therapy Mentor page. I know many of you guys may have watched our videos in the past. We've done hundreds of videos over the years, written tons of articles about various topics. As Jared mentioned, we have talked about health insurance before, but I know we have a lot of new followers who may be interested in learning more about this topic. And as Jared mentioned, we're also going to invite our friend Parita on, who is a health insurance advisor, and she can talk about some of the different options that she offers as a private health insurance advisor for those of you guys that may be considering that as an alternative to the other options. But as Jared gets our video shared in a couple groups, I see that a lot of you guys are already on live, so thanks for tuning in live. I know many of you guys will also watch later on the replay on Facebook and listen later on our podcast. So thanks to all of you that will watch now or later. If you are on live, we'd love if you'd say hello in the comments. I see that Laura is on. Nikki says, hey. Hi, Amber. Hi, Courtney. Hi, Seth. Hi, Rachel. Thank you guys for joining. And I see some of you guys are already hitting that thumbs up button on the video. We truly appreciate your support in liking this video and sharing it with your friends who may be interested in also learning about health insurance options. Hey, Parita. I know Parita's on. We're going to invite Parita on camera here in a little while as well after we go through some of the basics. Hey, Courtney. So yeah, health insurance, it can be super confusing, and it's funny because so many of us, we work in healthcare, but I still feel like a lot of us don't really understand health insurance options when it comes to our own benefits. Especially, a lot of us stay on our parents' insurance all through college, and then even sometimes right into the beginning of your career, you might stay on your parents' insurance. So some of you guys may be figuring that out for the first time. Some of you may be later in your life and you already have a family, and maybe you're switching to travel therapy and you're just worried how it's going to work with maintaining good benefits for your family as a travel therapist. Because that's one of the scary things, like a lot of people choose to kind of stick with that security of like a permanent job because you understand how benefits work when you're a permanent W-2 employee, right? Like that makes sense when you receive benefits through that company, but once you go to more of this like contract type work, it's like, what do I do? Isn't health insurance so expensive when you have to do it on your own? And all those questions come up.
Yeah, it's complicated for everyone, but and what makes it more complicated even just for travelers, so I wrote an article probably 3 years ago about the different options, what we chose to do, and some of the feedback I got from that article is like, okay, well that sounds great, but that doesn't work for me because of this situation, or that doesn't work for me because of this situation. And what I realized is yeah, everyone has their own individual preferences, what they need, what their families need, and all that. So what works for us or what works for some travelers doesn't work for all travelers. So that's why it's best to just explain all the options. You think through your own situation and decide what's best for you.
Absolutely. So let's go through the different insurance options that we have as travel therapists. So the first one would be company insurance. So if you're a travel therapist, say you decide to work with the same company year round and you pretty much take back-to-back contracts. In that case, you would pretty much just maintain employment through that company the same way you would through a permanent company. You actually get benefits as a W-2 employee of the travel company, which makes it super easy, right? If you worked pretty much 52 weeks a year, even in most cases, if you took 1 or 2 weeks off between jobs, your insurance could still carry over with that same company. And usually with the company insurance, they'll offer a few different tiers of plans. Some of them may be low premium, high deductible. Some of them may have a lower deductible and a higher premium. There might be certain plans that might suit a family versus an individual better. Most of the time, the companies offer pretty decent insurance in our experience, but some are going to be better than others.
Yeah, so the company provided insurance, that's what most travelers do, and that probably makes the most sense for most people. There are a couple situations where it doesn't really make sense though. There's probably more than this, but the two I can think of is someone that is switching companies often, and they often meet their deductible. Because if you go from one company's insurance to another company's insurance, and you're already halfway to your deductible, then you're starting over with a new company, and that can be a huge pain for people. I mean, it can be way more costly that way. The other situation is like us now, since 2018, we haven't worked as full-time travelers. So there's these long gaps. We take, a contract here and there, but we don't work consistently. So we have these long gaps. Short gaps you can fill with Cobra, but for long gaps, there's not really that many good options. So those are two situations where company-provided insurance kind of falls short.
Yeah, and we definitely get a lot of questions about if you decide to take a job with another company, another agency, having to switch to a new insurance with that new company and how that can be a little bit complicated and tricky. Most travel therapists do choose to navigate it this way and it works out fine, but it can be definitely a negative of relying on the company insurance. So that's some pros and cons to consider there with the company insurance.
Okay, so the next is marketplace insurance. So when we first started, we went through company insurance. We were working kind of back-to-back contracts. Any short gaps, we would use Cobra. It worked perfectly for us. We never meet our deductibles, thank God. So that wasn't ever a concern. So that was what made sense for us. Then when we started taking more time off, then we had to consider other options. You can't just go through company insurance and use Cobra for, say, a 6-month gap to travel internationally. So then we started looking at, what else can we do here? Well, what we came upon was marketplace plans, started researching that, and for us not working and being eligible for subsidies, marketplace plans made a lot of sense. But for a lot of people, if you go through the marketplace, it can be very expensive, and that's usually people that don't qualify for subsidies based on income. So the marketplace plans can give you subsidies based on your income as long as you're not offered insurance through an employer, which is exactly the situation we were in taking time off to travel internationally.
So when we refer to the marketplace plans, this is what was considered like the Obamacare type insurance, the government website where you can go on and search different insurance plans. So we get a lot of questions from people that are like, well, if I don't want to rely on the company insurance and I don't want to switch back and forth, could I just stay on like an Obamacare marketplace plan all year long? You could. However, when you take a contract, so you say you were having it, you took a few weeks off and you were on your marketplace plan, it was fine. You got a good rate because the government offered you subsidies, which are discounts, to take that plan. However, as soon as you start a contract with a company and they do offer you affordable health insurance, if you are offered that insurance, you have to mark that as a question on your Obamacare application and say, yes, I was offered insurance, I chose to deny it. In that case, they don't offer you discounts or subsidies, so it drives the price up. So for a travel therapist to try to stay on a marketplace plan year-round, it's actually not that affordable because when we are on contract, as long as the company offers insurance, there are a handful of travel therapy companies that don't offer insurance. Like I'm on a contract with one right now. But for the most part, this won't work. The other thing about marketplace that can sometimes be a downfall is it goes by your state, and certain state marketplace plans are only applicable in that state, which can be a negative if you decide to stay on it year round and you're traveling around. You might not have coverage in other states.
Yeah, that is a big negative. Actually, right now I'm on a marketplace plan, and in Hawaii, I actually went on there to look the other day to just see, we've done some really hard hikes. We actually did a really hard hike yesterday, and I was like, what if I get hurt on one of these hikes? I'm not covered at all in Hawaii, so that is a huge downside of a marketplace plan.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be traveling around, you're not going to be in your home state, going on road trips and things like that, it really falls short. And that's something I didn't realize a few years ago. I don't use my health insurance that much, but it would be nice if we're traveling and I get hurt on the hike to know that at least have some coverage.
Yeah, which is why Jared has been considering switching off that marketplace plan, which we'll talk about in a little while. And again, this is going to be state dependent. We have heard from some travel therapists that their marketplace plan worked well for them in other states, but for ours, for Virginia, we're pretty sure it does not, based on the research we've done.
And another thing to add there too is not only does the coverage options, where you're covered, does it depend on your state, but also the costs. because for Virginia, my costs for a marketplace plan were really low, especially with the subsidies. But I talked to some friends of mine in other states, and theirs were really high, even with subsidies. So it varies drastically depending on states.
Yeah. Another option that we sort of brushed over was Cobra. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with what Cobra is, it's a short-term plan that is kind of like a continuation or an extension of your plan offered by your employer. So say that you lose your job, like in a permanent job situation, you can pick up Cobra for a couple weeks or a couple months after losing your job, just as a short-term option to cover you until you're able to get some other type of coverage or get a new job. So as travelers, you can rely on Cobra for short-term gaps between jobs. Like say you're just taking 2 weeks off and you know you're going to be switching companies and you won't have that same coverage, you could rely on Cobra for that, but it's not good for long periods because it can be very expensive.
Yeah. And then the last thing, Cobra, I mean, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense for people with short gaps. The great thing about Cobra is that it covers you retroactively. So that means, say you take 3 weeks off between assignments and you're switching companies. So you're not covered by health insurance that time. During that time, if you don't have any medical expenses during that time, you don't have to pay for Cobra. But say you did have a medical expense, say, I don't know, like you fell and hurt your ankle and you went to the emergency room or something like that, then you can apply the Cobra retroactively. So that's a huge benefit to Cobra and using company-provided plans, but only in limited circumstances.
Yep. And the next one we want to talk about would be private insurance, which is currently what I'm using and what I decided to switch to. Private insurance can cover you all year round, so you wouldn't have to rely on going through the company insurance, and you wouldn't have to switch back and forth. And this was the biggest reason I decided to go on private insurance starting this year, so I wouldn't have to switch back and forth when I went on contract or off contract, whether we were working or traveling or doing whatever. The private plans tend to cover you nationwide, and again, Parita is going to tell us a little bit more about this because that's a lot of what she deals with, but we're going to finish summarizing here first. So there's a lot of benefits to going on private. Sometimes it can be more expensive than the company insurance, but not always. So it's really good to kind of compare your options and see in your circumstance what the average cost is going to be. I know mine is a little bit more expensive than when I was on company insurance, but averaged out across the year with all the other benefits, it really outweighs what I had before on the pro columns.
Yeah, the private insurance, when I was researching this initially, several years ago trying to decide what we were going to do, my biggest hesitancy obviously is cost. But if the cost makes sense compared to other options, it's by far the best option because you don't have to worry about switching companies, switching insurance plans. You don't have to worry about not being covered outside of your home state, all of those things. So it's the best option as long as the cost is reasonable. Yeah. That's basically what we found.
Also a really good thing for somebody who doesn't want to switch back and forth because of meeting the deductible. So that's another benefit, especially for people who have families who don't want to lose any kind of coverage throughout the year or have to restart their deductible.
Yeah, and we do know travelers that because of that not having to restart deductible, they purposely go on private plans even though they are more expensive just so they don't have to worry about their deductible starting over.
Yeah. Besides that, there's two other options that aren't really very common, but we do want to make sure that we mention.
Yeah, so one is HealthShare Ministries. I started reading about this probably about 5 years ago, and I thought that was going to be a great option. But the more I've learned over the years, I really don't think this makes sense for a lot of people because if you go online and you do some research on these companies, they seem great for normal day-to-day things, but there are some horror stories of people being denied massive claims. And that's when you need your health insurance. It's like, I don't care about paying for an ER visit out of pocket, but if I had a heart attack or something, like that's when I would need my health insurance, right? So the thing about the health sharing ministries is they don't have to abide by the same standards that an insurance company would. So they kind of decide to a degree what they'll cover and what they want. And sometimes you don't know that ahead of time. And so that basically eliminated that completely for us. There also are some religious exemptions or religious requirements, not exemptions, requirements for a lot of these plans that we don't necessarily meet. So depending on your situation, you might consider that. But if I ever did a health ministry plan, I would also still have a catastrophic health insurance plan as well, just in case they didn't cover something huge that could bankrupt you.
Yeah, because it's definitely not considered traditional insurance. It's called a health share.
Yeah.
So again, there can be some real big negatives there, but some people do choose to go that route.
It's always cheaper. That's why people choose it. It's significantly cheaper than almost any other option.
Yeah. And the last one would be short-term plans. And I don't know we don't know a ton about these, but from what we understand, they're like short-term private plans. So it kind of would be like an alternative to using Cobra, but again, they're only valid for short-term gaps. So they wouldn't be a really good option for you guys to maintain year-round. So we do just want to kind of recap exactly how we've done it, how we used to do it, and how we do it now, so you guys can get a picture of like what our year looks like as a travel therapist.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, when we started out for our first probably 3.5 years, we chose to go whatever company we were working with at the time, we used their health insurance. Any gap between assignments where we were switching companies, because remember, most companies, if you stay with the same company from one assignment to the next and it's less than about 30 days, some are 2 weeks, but between 2 weeks and 30 days from ending one assignment to starting the next, they'll cover you during that gap. If you switch companies though, they don't cover you. So what we did is if we were switching companies, we would rely on Cobra during that gap, and we just went from company insurance to company insurance to company insurance with Cobra between any gaps that we needed. And that worked out great for us, primarily because we almost never have medical expenses. We don't meet our deductibles ever. So we didn't care about deductibles starting over. That wasn't important to us. So I think for a lot of travelers that are young and healthy, that can be a great option. And young, healthy, and taking back-to-back contracts or contracts very often where you're not going to have huge gaps. That's probably a very good option.
Yep. During that time, we were only ever having 1 to 2 weeks off between jobs. So there were never any longer gaps during that time, which is what a lot of travel therapists do. You maintain work throughout the year, so that could be a good option for you. But I do want to also note that if we took 1 or 2 weeks between jobs to go home, and then we were planning to switch to another company, and we basically didn't have insurance during that time because we didn't actually fill out our paperwork and sign up for Cobra. We just were planning on doing it retroactively if we needed to. What that meant was we couldn't go home and do doctor's appointments at home, which it's like ideally if you were home for that week, that's when you would like to go see your doctor, your normal doctor. What we ended up doing was we would just go see doctors when we were on assignment because that's when we really had the health insurance coverage. So I would always be searching for like a new OB or a new dentist or a new ophthalmologist to try to get my appointments done during the work week. And that was always a little bit tricky too because I couldn't really get them done when I was at home during that week off because I didn't really have insurance.
Yep. So the next thing we did after we started taking the longer breaks, this is when I wrote that article with all the options, because at that time I was really exploring what we were going to do, knowing that we were going to take long periods off. We switched to the Marketplace plan. And that made a ton of sense for us at the time because we were not offered health insurance by any company. We were taking time off purposely. And we were eligible for subsidies because our income was low. We were only working part of the year, and working as travelers, obviously, with a tax home, our taxable pay is not very high. So our premium was very low, and we got great insurance through the Marketplace. And that worked wonderfully until we started. We never had to use it outside of our home area. So we didn't really pay that much attention to the fact that we weren't actually covered when we're going on these trips and traveling around the country. And driving around the country is when you need health insurance because your odds of getting in a car wreck or some kind of injury is way higher during that time than just sitting home, going back and forth to work. So that was a massive downside for us, and that's when we decided to start looking at other options outside of that.
And part of that time too, with the time that we were taking off from work and we were on the Marketplace plan, we were actually traveling internationally. So for that, it was kind of okay because we were like, we're not even really home having it. The only reason we're going to need it is if for some reason we have to come back because we get injured, and we'll go back to our home state at that time anyway using the Marketplace plan. But then when we started doing some longer US road trips, it was like, wait a minute. This isn't really the best option, actually. And then people often ask us what we did about insurance internationally. We did get like a travel insurance plan, which are usually really cheap. I think we paid like $100 or $200 for several months abroad, which just covers your basic like air evacuation if you need to get evacuated,
for
or emergencies overseas. Whereas like we didn't have full coverage when we were traveling internationally because other countries, honestly, you can walk in for minor things and pay out of pocket, and it's usually pretty cheap, especially a lot of the countries that we traveled to, like in Asia.
Now, it is important to note that on that Marketplace plan, a lot of you guys are not going to be in the same situation that we were in, where we're taking 6 months off. Like, I don't know almost any other travelers that do that. So in that case, if we were going back and forth and offered insurance through through an employer of some sort, then it wouldn't have made sense because my marketplace plan was significantly more expensive than any other option without the subsidies. So the only reason that made sense and the only reason we chose to do it was having the subsidies. And that's not going to apply to everyone. So I think the actual number of people that are going to be in a position to take a marketplace plan and have that be the best option for them is probably pretty low. Although at the time I didn't realize that, and I thought that was probably good for a lot of people.
There are some folks out there that we've heard of that take like maybe a month or 6 weeks off. And so for you, it might make sense if you decide to, stay with your company insurance and then take that 6 weeks and sign up for a marketplace plan, because 6 weeks or a month is a little too long to be relying on COBRA. So there are some people that might work for, but I know a lot of you guys do this back-to-back contracts. So marketplace may or may not make sense for you.
Yep.
So then the last option that I recently switched to this year, as I mentioned, was a private plan all year. I've been on that all year this year, and it's been working really well for me. The first several months of the year I wasn't working, so it was great because, I was working PRN. So it was great because I wasn't eligible for insurance at that time through my PRN job back home. Then we took a couple months off, traveled to Mexico, kept my private insurance then, and that helped me with any like prescriptions or doctor's appointments when I came back home too, for a couple weeks when we were back home. Then I started this contract in Hawaii, and I'm taking it through a travel company that does not offer health insurance. So again, I needed to have my own insurance anyway. So far this year, this private plan has been excellent for me in all regards, whether I was working PRN, not working, so forth and so on. And it is important to note that even if I was working with a company right now that did offer health insurance, the price of my private plan would not change because it's not dependent on subsidies the way that the marketplace plan is.
Yeah, and I think right now I'm still in a marketplace plan, but probably starting next year I will not be because, like Aaron mentioned, he said, if you do that Mauna Loa hike again, you're going to need health insurance. Yeah, last week we did this hike to the top of the largest active volcano in the world in Hawaii. And the whole time we're walking on these like really unstable lava rocks and stuff. And the whole time I'm thinking like, man, if I get hurt here, I'm not covered by insurance right now. That really stinks.
And then I'm over here thinking like, I am covered, so it's okay.
Yeah, so I just don't want to have that thought in the back of my head. So I do know that if I switch to a private plan and I am still eligible for subsidies, which I'm not sure if I will be next year or not, it'll be slightly more expensive, but it will be a lot better coverage and I won't have to worry when we're traveling. So absolutely. I think that is that's a really important thing.
Yeah, so just some of the pros and some of the reasons, again, that I switched. I was just happy to not have the hassle of switching because all of 2019 and 2020, I was switching insurance all the time. I had like a new insurance card all the time, and I couldn't even remember which one I was on sometimes because it was like, sometimes I'm on the company insurance, sometimes I'm on the marketplace insurance, sometimes I'm on this other company insurance. And that was getting to be a lot, and I literally had all these different insurance cards, and I couldn't remember whether I was on United or Blue Cross Blue Shield or who I even needed to call. So that was just a hassle, and I'm glad to be done with that. Because I go to a lot more like maintenance doctor's appointments. Us women, we get our regular like OB every year. I tried to go and do my eye appointment, my dentist appointment, and all that. So I was feeling like I was using it a lot, and I was like, oh my gosh, like which insurance am I on? So I'm glad to be done with that. I'm glad that it covers me in all 50 states. So, we're on this contract in Hawaii, covered. It's awesome. I feel like it's better coverage than what I had before. And again, I'm going to let Parita tell you guys more about that because some of it's still a little bit over our heads in terms of like PPO and all that kind of stuff and like what type of coverage it is. Because luckily for us being healthy, we don't use it outside of preventative care that much. But if we needed to, we would want to know that it was good coverage.
Yeah. So I guess one question we do get sometimes though, a lot of people read Fifth Wheel PT website and stuff because I write about finance. So a lot of those people are interested in finance and they say, well, I'm young, healthy, what's the cheapest option? Almost always the cheapest option, for the most part, is going to be company-provided health insurance because they help subsidize part of the cost for you. Partially, they pay some of your premium on your behalf, but also they're able to negotiate lower rates because they have this massive pool of employees that they're, instead of just giving or buying health insurance for one person, they're buying it for a group of people, which usually comes with a discount, right? So that's almost always going to be your cheapest option, and then using COBRA for short gaps. But like we said, there's definitely some downsides to that, and there are some limitations to that in terms of hassle if you're taking a lot of time off or if you often meet your deductible. So keep that in mind when you're making your choices.
So hopefully that gives you guys a good overview of some of the different options that are out there and lets you know from our experience some of the ones that we've experimented with and what worked better or not. If you guys have questions about any of that, please leave your questions in the comments. We will answer them at the end. We do want to go ahead and invite Parita on camera so she can tell you guys a little bit more about how private insurance options work and what services she offers as a health insurance advisor. And I do want to let you guys know, prior to, 6 or 8 months ago, we didn't really know what it was like to work with a health insurance advisor. And for a lot of you guys, learning about this now, it's kind of like, I like to compare it to working with a travel therapy recruiter. So when you talk to a recruiter, it's no obligation. You're just talking to them to get information. And then if they can help you to find a job, that's great. If not, no hard feelings. It's exactly the same way working with a private health insurance advisor. They are there to advise you, to give you information, to show you some different options. And the best part is they're not always just showing you private. They can help you to compare. This is what it would be if you did a marketplace plan. You can show them your benefits package from your company and say, this is what the marketplace plan would be compared to your to your company insurance, and this is what it would be compared to private insurance. And they can help you to decide what are good choices for you. You're not obligated to pay them anything. If you end up taking insurance through them, they earn commission the same way that a recruiter earns commission, but you don't ever actually pay them, which is really cool. And that's why we like working with a health insurance advisor, because it's all on the benefit side for us. There's no downside, and they do free consultations. So With that said, we'll invite Parita on. We'll answer, again, the questions at the end. And we'll let Parita tell you a little bit more about exactly what it does. Just give us 1 second because we're figuring out.
Yes, requests.
Okay. We're going to figure out really quickly our Facebook Live on how to invite Parita on. Maybe. Okay, allow our viewers to request to join. All right, well, if we can figure out the technical issues, then we will invite Parita on. If not, maybe not. Give us just 1 second, guys. And while we are figuring out the technical difficulties, if you guys have questions, please put them in the comments because we are going to answer those shortly. And as we do this, Sylvia will gladly take them because this is actually our first time trying to do an interview live on Facebook. We've done it a couple other ways before, but not using this platform.
On Instagram, it seems to be easier.
Mm-hmm. And we've used another platform in the past, but we thought that Facebook's platform had really upgraded since then.
I know we've had people ask to join before. I know Nick has accidentally asked to join before.
Nick, are you on? Because Nick, you've accidentally asked to join before. And we were like, Nick, we're not bringing you on camera. So if you have suggestions, let us know. Sorry, guys. We've been doing Facebook Lives for how many years now?
3.
But this is our first time running into a major glitch.
All right. Just go through the questions.
Yeah. Let's answer a couple of questions really quick.
All right, I'm not sure what Whitney's doing, but I'll go through some of these questions. All right, Laura said, this is perfect timing. I'm starting my first contract soon as a new grad. Seem to be drowning in health plan options. So the interesting thing about health options, like I said, there's a lot of different things you can choose from. If you're trying to choose between plans, though, it's important to remember, this might be common sense for some of you guys, but I know when we started out, we didn't realize this as much. But your premium and your deductible are kind of like two sides to a weighing machine. So basically, the higher your premium, the lower the deductible usually, and the higher the deductible, you lower your premium usually. So keep that in mind. If you're someone that is pretty young and healthy and you're probably not going to max out, or you're not going to meet your deductible for the year, then it probably doesn't matter if your deductible is pretty high. And those are usually the people, the young, healthy people, that it makes sense to take the lower premium in favor of a higher deductible because you're probably not going to meet it anyway. So keep that in mind when you're trying to choose between, say you're going to take a company plan and they give you 3 options and the premium's all different, the deductibles are all different. In reality, if you're young and healthy, you're not going to meet your deductible. You probably want to take the low premium plan. But if you are someone that has a lot of medical expenses, then it might make sense to pay a little bit more for the premium and have a lower deductible. Courtney says, our school-based company will cover us for the 9 weeks we have off over the summers as long as we have signed a contract for the next school year. Since we have grown children as dependents using the employer-sponsored health insurance, that allows us to keep all of our previous doctors and our checkups done over the summers. Yeah, that's perfect. If you can get covered during that entire time, that's a great plan to be on. All right, Kevin says, my wife and I live and we'll have our tax home. Oh, Prita's asking to join now, it looks like. Did you figure it out?
Yep.
All right, we're on.
Okay.
She asked to join for a second, but then it went away.
Okay, I think we have it figured out, guys. We'll finish answering these questions real quick, and then we'll get Parita on here. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
So Kevin is asking about health insurance private options that in a state that doesn't allow private plans, and that is a big issue. We've had some people ask about that, so we'll ask Parita about that.
All right, I think we figured it out, guys, so we're going to bring Parita on. Sorry about the technical difficulties. And this is a great question for Parita to answer. All right, she is joining us in 3, 2, 1. Okay, we figured it out, guys.
All right, it's required itself to have it. Anyways, okay, we're doing it on the phone.
All right, did we get it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, hey Parita, welcome. I think probably go the other way because I think we are horizontal.
Yeah, horizontal.
So maybe turn your phone the other way.
There you go.
Cool. All right, if we could get some feedback from the audience, does that look normal on all of your ends? So sorry for the technical difficulties. I swear we've been doing this for a while, but this is the first time we've tried to go live with somebody, so awesome. All right, so let's just start with having you introduce yourself, Parita. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay, you guys, I don't know, but I'm hearing like multiple videos now. I don't know if I'm like on this multiple.
Are you on your laptop too? Maybe get rid of your laptop as well.
Okay, we're just gonna go. So, hi everybody, my name is Parita. I'm a licensed health insurance advisor. I am so excited to be here to talk to everybody today about private health insurance. Been in the industry for a little under a year now, and I've learned a lot. I would have to say I definitely didn't know anything about insurance until I started this career. There's not a lot of information out there, so it's definitely not something that most people know a lot about. But I actually have to say, Whitney and Jared, I'm very, very impressed about your guys' knowledge base.
We've done a lot of research.
You guys really know your stuff. I watched every single minute and I was just like, wow, they really know all of the options, which is awesome. But yeah, so private insurance, there's a lot to it. I'll definitely do my best to answer everybody's questions. I specialize on the travel medical professional side. Most of my clients are either travel therapists or travel nurses. So I'm very familiar with the contracts and a lot of the different things the agencies are offering. I support every single thing you guys have said about what is the best option for people. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about details. What I normally do with clients is I really just want to understand what everybody's individual situation is, because what works for one person might not work for somebody else. So then, of course, the most important thing is, what are your needs? And then how can we make sure that we are meeting those needs? So budget is very important. And then obviously, if anybody has pre-existing conditions, those are super important. So those are some of the things that we'll refer to with private insurance. Did you guys want me to just kind of start off high level and talk about what private is and how it works?
Let me, I can ask you just a couple questions just to guide, like, what I know the audience might be wondering. So just first, like, tell us a little bit about like how you help clients, like how does the process work? Because like I told them, it's pretty much kind of like working with a recruiter, right? Like it's no obligation. You can set up a call. So what does that call usually look like?
Absolutely. So I have a calendar appointment system. So if anybody wants to set up some time to talk to me about their options, I have two different types of appointments they can set up. If they just want to quote and they want to get an idea of what is it going to cost me, I have like 15-minute appointments that you can set up. If you know for sure that you are really needing new insurance or you're not currently covered and we want to make sure we find some options for you, I have more like 60-minute appointments. To your exact point, there's no obligation. I just want to make sure that I'm helping guide you in whatever direction whoever I'm talking to needs. So because there might be cases where I'm not actually able to help somebody if they have a condition that doesn't get covered, things like that. So yeah, step one, booking an appointment. That way I know exactly what you need from me. And then we talk about what those needs are. Are you looking for short-term coverage? Are you looking for something more long-term? Is it for just you? Is it for the whole family? We kind of get into the details of what you're looking for. And then we go through all of the options. I actually do a screen share with my clients where I show them, here are the private insurance options available to you. Here are the marketplace options available. And a lot of times they'll actually also send me what their employer plans are. So
Awesome.
I'll even compare side by side for them and I'll find out, okay, this plan has this cost and this deductible, this plan has this, so which one looks like it's better? And I kind of guide them in that direction.
Okay.
And yeah, after weighing all their options, we kind of take the next steps based on what it seems like they want to move towards.
Yeah, that's a really something I really appreciated talking to you about. Is I thought that I never really wanted to talk to an insurance advisor or anything because I felt like it'd be a lot of pressure. But talking to you, it wasn't really like that. It's like, here are the options. Do you think this would work good for you? If so, great. If not, then there's other options as well. I really appreciate people that come at it from that perspective.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think as travelers, we're super used to like just being sold to. I mean, as individuals in this world, right?
Yeah.
Like you're always having people just trying to sell you things, and you don't know their motives. And it's like, what if they're being super biased? But we really appreciate that you kind of go over all the different options, because I think people always just want to, make sure they're picking the right thing for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to second that and say that make sure that if you don't work with me or whoever you are working with, make sure you see a license, because it's really unfortunate, but I guess this is something in every industry these days, but there's a lot of fake insurance out there. And
Really?
that's something, yeah, and there's people selling it, and that's even more unfortunate because it's like we can't always catch these things, but when that happens, like just ask somebody for their license, see if you can either get a copy of it or see a copy of it. That way you at least know you're working with a professional agent.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
As we dive a little bit into like some of the options, I know that one of the ones that you're a big proponent for is private insurance, and that's the one I ended up switching to. So in your opinion, what are some of the pros and like the benefits of choosing private insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. I like the flexibility that comes with private, especially for all of the travelers. It's going to go with you across all 50 states on or off the job. You don't have to worry about getting kicked off or losing insurance, which is really important for a lot of people. Some private insurance, so you have to make sure you know the fine print, but some private insurance, if something major were to happen, there's a chance that you would get kicked off onto an Obamacare plan afterwards, or an alternative solution other than Obamacare. It depends on whatever the case is. But yeah, the flexibility is definitely huge. There's no contracts that come with it, so that's important as well. But to be honest, I think the number one thing is the fact that I've seen hundreds and hundreds of insurance plans at this point, and the private insurance really is some of the best coverage and the most affordable.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can definitely second that on the coverage because the costs, they go back and forth, but from the coverage of the plan that Whitney has versus the one that I have, it's definitely better.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know that you, when we first started talking, you were educating me even about like the PPO versus some of the other options. Can you explain a little bit about that and like what type of insurance is usually on these private plans?
Yeah, so private insurance is going to be PPO, and that stands for Preferred Provider Organization. What that means is you're never actually going to need to get a referral in order to see a specialist. And I think that's really important, especially for you guys that are traveling, because if you're, say your insurance is a state insurance, and then you do need a referral from your primary care, but you have to go see a specialist because something might have happened to you when you're in a different state. Well, then you're going to have to somehow see your primary care physician in order to go see a specialist, whatever state you're in. It's just going to be a nightmare just to go see the doctor to get the work that you need to get done, right? So preferred provider is really important. In summary, it means nationwide coverage. The other two options, well, there's like 3 or 4 of them. There's EPO, which stands for Exclusive Provider Organization, which sounds like it would be a good thing, but what it really means is a handful of people accept the insurance. And then you have HMO, and then you have POS. And to summarize both of those, what that really means is you're going to be limited to your zip code and your account for where your insurance is actually going to work for you. So PPO for travelers is the ultimate, the one that you want to make sure you go for.
Okay.
Did you say one of them is abbreviated POS?
Yes, and what you think is really what it is.
Wow. They should have come up with a better.
They should work on that.
Yeah.
They should work on that.
It cracks me up too when people abbreviate short-term disability.
STD, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not throwing abbreviation on that one.
No.
So I know we got a question here about like certain states. Are there some states that do or don't have like private insurance plans?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. It doesn't really make sense to me. It's actually very frustrating because then I have to turn people away, especially if they don't have a workaround or they don't have like a home base that's in a different state than the one they're in currently. Now, let's see, the West Coast likes to give us grief. California acts like it's its own country, so they want to have you take their state insurance. I know that there's a couple states that you would have to have an agent that's a resident in the state. So unfortunately, I can't live in all 50 of them. So Arizona, Pennsylvania have that residential restriction. And then you have the tri-state area over on the East Coast and northern states up. I'm so bad at geography. The Northeast, right? So you're looking at like Maine, what's it called? Connecticut, some of that area, they also have restrictions when it comes to private.
New York does too as well, right?
Sad but true. Yeah, New York is tough. And same thing applies. They want you to get their state insurance.
So they just don't allow any private insurance at all, like outside of the marketplace?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wonder if I don't know if you know, but I wonder if their state insurance does cover the residents in the other 49 states. Because like I know Virginia does not. So I'm curious if their state plans do.
I don't think they do, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
So for people in those states, probably going through a company insurance is probably a very good option.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I don't have a percentage. I would say a lot of the times, the company provided insurance really is the best option if they are covering a huge chunk of the premium.
Okay.
I've come across some clients where they're paying maybe like $30 a week. To me, take that insurance. And then once you need to get off of that plan or you're switching agencies or you're lapsing, then give me a call.
Okay.
But to be honest, more of my clients, they're taking out like anywhere from $100 to $115 a week. And to me, that's very expensive, especially if you're a single person. In most circumstances, the employer options are very expensive for more than one person. So if you have a spouse or if you have dependents or kids or anything like that, it tends to be way more expensive because usually on any employer plan, whether it's an agency or any other employer option, they're gonna give you a discount for the employee, but they're gonna be charging full price for any other person that's on the.
Wow. Okay, that's good to know. And again, this just kind of goes back to like mine and Jared's situation is not exactly the same as all of our viewers. And I think that's why it's super important to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable on the different options and just compare. That way you guys can decide, you know, maybe I am already on the best option, but maybe there's something out there that would be a better option for me. So just good to like know all your options and be able to compare there.
So we got one question. I don't know if you would know anything about this, but she says, when I previously had private insurance, I couldn't deduct the premium from my paycheck or have it pre-tax. And by the end of the year, couldn't deduct it at all due to overall income. Has that changed? Do you know anything about how it works for like tax deductions and things?
Well, I know that there's no connection to private insurance and taxes. I know that you should be able to deduct it. That's actually news to me if someone had a hard time doing that. You're supposed to be able to, like, if you itemize, you can use that as one of your itemized.
Yeah, there might be something where it's income, like a phase out based on income. So I would imagine that at least people lower income are going to be able to deduct the premiums, but I'm not positive on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know either.
All right, let me see if there's any other questions before we move on to what else we have to talk about.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, Katie had given us some advice about the screen sharing. Thanks, Katie. I'm glad we finally did. So yeah, so in addition to, I know there are some limitations for certain states. You also mentioned that there are some limitations for pre-existing conditions.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so private insurance, one of the reasons why they're able to give such great coverage for such good prices is because they limit not only who has access to the plans, but also who's actually able to get on the plans. It's meant for people that are not needing to go to the doctors left and right or go to the hospital multiple times a year. So that's how they're able to keep their costs low, if that makes sense. So with that being said, depending on what pre-existing condition you have, that may or may not actually get approved. So I actually have a 64-page document that tells me what can and cannot get approved. So, while I'm talking to people for our appointments, I'm unfortunately having to dig into their health history and ask all the questions like, all right, what medications are you taking? And, what's going on? Tell me about that hospitalization, because the worst thing I could do for somebody is to find them an amazing plan and then I can't even get them qualified for it. So once we decide on the plan, and I'm coming to bat for you. I'm just making sure that I'm able to get you approved. I'll do everything I can. But unfortunately, there are major pre-existing conditions that potentially wouldn't get approved. And the way I look at it, the insurance company, it's doing something for the client here. Like, it doesn't want you to get on a plan that maybe you need a certain service and they don't actually offer that on the plan. So that's really the mindset behind why they approve and don't approve people. So for example, somebody with diabetes, if they're needing insulin, the insurance company is going to automatically deny them because they don't provide that. That's not something that they cover. So they're not going to be doing the best thing for that client. If you have somebody that's got like major back disorders that probably need a lot more treatment and a lot more care, then it's potential that they're going to need major medical coverage, which is better from Obamacare.
Okay.
So it depends, but if you're young and you're healthy and you've got, a couple meds here and there, almost everybody's taking an anxiety med these days. So it's definitely not a big deal on a lot of stuff, but there are circumstances where maybe not. But the good thing is I do also have private insurance plans that are guaranteed issued, which means that they don't look at your health history for some plans.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's always a good backup plan. I had somebody who needed something for literally 3 months, and so we put her on that, and I'm like, listen, I'm okay with this for temporary, but let's make sure we get you back onto an employer plan once you take up a contract.
Would that be one of the short-term plans?
Yeah, it does act like a short-term plan. Absolutely. Some people just hate Obamacare and do not like those plans at all. And so if I find somebody who hates Obamacare and can't qualify for the other option, then I almost always end up putting them on that short-term plan. But it's not a short-term plan. It could be as long as you want. It's more just like, how temporary do you want it for, or do you want it for long-term?
Okay. We got a question. Do private plans offer coverage for complementary and alternative medicine?
So alternative medicine, that would be things, I'm assuming, Emily, do you mean things like chiropractic and acupuncture, or I'm not sure what else would fall under there.
Naturopath, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say more like the other natural things. Chiropractic benefits are included. And I know that there's physical therapy benefits that are included. Most of the other stuff, most insurance doesn't even cover some of those things.
Yeah, I know when I was looking at options, there's not much coverage outside of like just basic rehab type, chiropractic and PT coverage.
So Emily says chiropractor, acupuncture. I know for sure, like I remember looking on my plan and seeing that chiropractic was covered, and I thought that was interesting because not a lot of insurances actually cover that in my experience or my knowledge. Acupuncture I don't know about though.
Yeah, probably depends on the provider that's doing it.
Yeah, definitely not acupuncture, but chiropractic benefits, yeah. And it's more so on like the wellness side. So it's like you get that if you want to get your back cracked out and, do the spinal manipulation thing, that's usually what it is that they cover.
Okay. So Parita, tell us a little bit besides like the initial phone call that you offer and helping people to compare plans. Say that you do place somebody in a plan. What other services do you provide in terms of like customer service ongoing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I tell my clients as soon as we get them all set up, I'm like, listen, you're stuck with me. So anything and everything you need in the future regarding your health coverage, I'm your girl. So whether I have to, Whitney, that time that you had to actually like find new doctors because you had to go see people in a different state, I do that work for my clients. So I'll do the research. I'll make sure that I'm sending the top rated doctors that are closest to wherever you're located, that are in network and accept the insurance. I'll do that research for my clients. If they get a bill that doesn't make sense, I want to make sure that we're keeping as much of your money in your pocket as possible. So I'll come fight for you on the bill. And I mean, it really is just whatever it is that you need. I had a client call me a couple weeks ago and she said that she had to get this steroid medication eye drops and it was going to be over $400. And I was like, no, we're not paying that. So then I was able to do some research and I found it for her for $25. So then we did 25 instead of 400. So that felt really great. And I was happy that, we were able to save her a ton of money on that. So yeah, whatever the things are, I mean, when it comes to your health expenses, that's what I'm here for. I just want to make sure that people are getting what they need. So as an agent, customer service to me is even more important than anything else.
Yeah. That is so cool to me because I feel like you normally when you sign up through your, say you sign up for your company insurance, like you just have to call the number on the back of your card and talk to the customer service and wait however many hours. But it kind of seems like when you work with a health advisor, it's like you are like a liaison for them to help them through those things. And you know so much more about it than they do because maybe it's the first time they've ever had to get a medicine for this thing or the first time they ever had to go see a specialist for a new condition. And suddenly they have this explanation of benefits and they're like, they feel like they're on a lonely island and they don't understand it.
Nice to have somebody in your corner.
You talk to people about this stuff every day, so you know more about it probably than they do.
Yeah, customer service to me is important, and I think of my clients as my friends. Like, I'm your health insurance friend. That might be what we talk about, but I got your back in the other areas of life too, and we're usually friends on social media too. So it's nice. So I get to interact with people, and I like their stuff, and so I feel like it's a little bit more than just me getting to be their agent. But I'm definitely there to help whenever they need me. I'm usually a text or a phone call away.
That's awesome. And again, for our traveler friends watching, like this reminds me of the relationship with the recruiter, like the staffing recruiter. Back when we first started traveling, we thought that was like a purely business relationship with a recruiter. We didn't like have any conversations outside of just like, do you have the job? Do you not have the job? But later on, we learned like you can be friends with these people, like they're human too, and they can be your buddy and your ally through this whole process. So that's awesome that you do that for your people too.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up, guys, again, if there's any more questions that you guys have for us about our experience with health insurance or Parita, go ahead and put them in the comments. But if not, just to kind of summarize everything that we talked about here, there's a ton of different options out there. For a lot of people, being on the company insurance makes sense, but I think it's when you have to worry about switching between companies, when you worry about taking time off, like those are the biggest circumstances where you're probably going to want to consider other options. Or if you have a spouse or dependents that you're worried about having any lapses in coverage or,
meet your
deductible often, those types of things would be where you might want to consider alternative options such as private insurance or Obamacare or some other options. If you guys want to get connected with Parita, we'll put her contact information where you guys can set up a free consultation with her in the comments. And again, just let her know if you decide to reach out. We do have a partnership with her. If you would just let her know that we referred you, that would be super awesome. And she'll help you out.
Yep. And if you could, before we end this video, if you got value from it, please like, comment, let us know. We always appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the thumbs up. We hope this was educational. Again, I know we've talked about it in the past, but we do as much research as we can. But again, we're not experts. Like somebody like Parita definitely knows this stuff a lot better than we do because she deals with it every day and she has specialized training about health insurance. We were just reading articles online trying to figure this whole thing out like the rest of you guys. So,
yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Parita. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to all of you guys soon.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.